O'Reilly. Are your wiper blades chattering, skipping, or squeaking? Don't let streaks or smearing on your windshield compromise your visibility. When it's time to replace your wiper blades, stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts and see our selection. Our professional parts people will even install your new wiper blades while you wait. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.
Oh, hey. I didn't tell anybody I was going to do it. Last time, what did I say? Oh, hey, dude.
Yeah, hey, man.
Hey, man. What's up?
Hey,
it's me.
man.
What's up?
THC.
Hey, what's up, man? It's THC. Right, Phil?
I hope we're not gonna.
We're gonna use this.
Okay,
that's my new intro. What's up, dude? It's THC, episode 85, in the house.
Yikes!
Episode 85 includes Phil being hungover. He went out last night, and he's not so sharp right now.
Hey, good plug.
Yeah, not so sharp. But anyway, episode 85 includes the great and powerful Sam Soholt of the Public Land Van, and it also includes the great and probably even more powerful, as you'll find, Clay Newcomb from Bear Hunting Magazine and many other things. And we're going to talk about bear baiting with Clay, and with Sam we're going to talk about his Stamp It For It project. We've got the contest to name Phil's mustache, which is awesome. Then we got a couple emails from you folks that wrote into the Hunting Collective. Are you looking forward to the Name Your Mustache contest, Phil?
You know, I actually am.
You actually am. It's been cathartic for
I'm
you.
excited to yell at people on mic about how rude they are.
Very upset.
Yes.
And so Sam's here. Sam, we're going on a rifle hunt for elk here, like tomorrow.
Yeah, we are indeed.
Tomorrow.
Leaving tomorrow.
Okay, episode 85 coming right at you. Let's go.
I guess I grew up on an older road. A pedal to the metal, always did what I was told. Until I found out that my brand new clothes came secondhand from the rich kids next door. When I grew up fast, I guess I grew up mean. There's 1,000 things inside my head I wish I ain't seen. And now I just wander through a real bad dream, or feeling like I'm coming apart at the seams. But thank you, Jack Daniels, oh, number 7.
Hey, everybody. Episode 85 continues. I'm here with Sam Soholt.
It's good to be here.
Is it?
Hasn't been that long.
Hasn't really been that long.
No.
We were here
I don't know.
not so long ago.
Yeah.
I can't remember what we talked about. I can't remember anything.
We did the
about
top fives.
Oh, yeah, THC top fives. That
Yep.
was fun.
Yeah.
That
I
was
wish you
fun.
would have published all the answers because I feel like I did well.
You did well. No, yeah. Actually, we could go back to that and say that last time Sam was on, he I think swept the THC top fives, gave the best answers in every single one, and it just happened that Phil got honorable mention on every one as well.
Wow, thanks, Ben. Well, the thing is, you didn't give people the option to vote for any of my top fives.
Oh, that was my bad. But you got honorable mention.
Yep.
Which, it's 2019. That's like a participation trophy.
I am a millennial.
So yeah, man, you did all right. But now it's we're almost into November, and like we just said, we're getting ready to go try to kill an elk with a riffle.
Yes. Yeah. It's crazy how fast this fall has gone. It
know.
seems like all I've been doing is driving around, but which isn't far from the truth.
Nobody would be surprised to hear that off you.
Yeah,
They're like,
no, I mean, I bought a van in September, and I've already put over 5,000 miles on it. So, speaking of which, I need to get the oil changed.
the van before we leave on this
Yeah.
hunt. Are we hunting out of the van?
Yeah, the van will be in base camp.
Damn
so
right.
Got
I like
a TP in the van, and yeah, it'll be good.
All right. If we got a van and a teepee, we're probably going to be cold.
Yep.
There'll be elk everywhere. Probably going to be lots of, we were talking about last night briefly, grizzly bears.
Yeah, but I just had a good conversation with Jared Frazier of 2%, and he's been in that area before. And he was saying the latest he had ever seen grizzly bears in that country was in early October. So with the cold weather and the snow and everything, we might...
They'd be gone.
Yeah, they might be gone.
They'd be hibernating.
Or we'll just, run smack dab into a whole pack of them.
whole pack. These guys ran into a pack of grizzly bears.
Yeah. I understand bears don't travel in packs, but
Yeah. Yeah. You never know.
You never know.
In this country, they might.
Yeah.
Phil's hungover. Hey, Phil,
Yeah, what's up?
you went out last night.
Yeah, there was an Onyx event.
We were all
at
three
a
of us
local
were there.
brewery.
Yeah, we were there, all there.
So that was only my first stop of the night. And so yeah, I went to one more establishment.
Your mouth is dry right now, probably.
I've been drinking a lot of water.
You got a headache.
I'm hydrating.
You got a headache.
I have a headache.
You're feeling...
It's
You're not
been
so-
a while
it's
since
not-
I've felt this way, and I don't like it.
all the synapses aren't firing quite. I left at like 7 o'clock and went and put my child to bed, and read him a book and sang him a song. You were out running the town like a vagrant.
Yeah, I too have children.
Are you sure you don't need a beer? I feel like that would
Oh
really
yeah, we're
help you right
drinking. We're drinking. What's this?
Fernson, actually.
Fernson?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
trying to
Good stuff.
not make any eye contact with the beer and just pretend that it's not in the room right now. But thanks for bringing it up.
Thanks for saying I
Appreciate
spit
it.
my beer onto the mic. Yeah, it's only 11:12 in the a.m.
Yeah, well,
5 o'clock
it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere in Europe. Speaking of that, we got a nice whiskey and ethics segment coming up. Well, we didn't really drink whiskey because it was 9 in the morning, but the whiskey was here, and we also made one. We have the little pairs with on our Meat Eater Straight Bourbon whiskey. We made one that says pairs with bear bait in honor of our baiting conversation. So that's coming up with Clay Newcomb. But before we get there, we got a lot of important stuff. You won't have been a part of a lot of this, but we got a lot of important stuff to cover before we get to this project that you've embarked on. The
Yes.
first one, I printed out some paper again. Remember last time I printed out paper, Phil? I like to make the sound.
Yep. Sounds official. Shuffling.
Shuffling of papers. Anyway, this is the Name Phil's Mustache contest. And the winner of this contest is going to get a THC hat. They didn't know this.
Yeah,
The people that sent
I
in-
didn't know that either.
You didn't know. I just made that up.
Okay.
People that wrote in didn't know what they were going to get, but now they do. And so, Sam, you're going to help us select the winner
Okay.
of this. The first one, name of Phil's mustache. Remember, Phil's mustache, it's getting better. But when we recorded the plea for mustache names, it was not great. It was just like a upper lip dusting.
Yeah, so it's filled in, but it's still, it's blonde. It's
blonde.
Doesn't look, I can't wear a mustache.
What are you thinking about it, Sam?
It's coming in good. Yeah, a little just for men. Like to
That's
darken
what-
it
that's
down
what
a
we were
little
saying.
bit.
We were talking
Yeah.
about that last week.
No,
Yeah.
I did that in college. We grew every
did?
year we would grow conference mustaches for our indoor track and field conference meet. And I grew a horrendous mustache. It didn't grow in the middle. Had like a nice like a super good gap. And then so yeah, we would do just for men to darken them up a little bit,
Nice,
make them look
nice.
a little thicker.
Nice. See,
Yeah.
maybe we can get them as a sponsor.
It's so good no one can tell, Phil. It's just for men gel.
Just for men.
Wow, still got it.
Hey, if anybody listening works at Just for Men Gel, we'd love you to sponsor this ongoing segment about Phil's mustache.
I think we should do touch of gray though.
Yeah. In the middle. In the middle.
Yeah, it makes
In
you
the
look
middle.
distinguished.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm into that. All right. Well, we have 5 choices here. All right. And I took this around the Meat Eater offices and got a lot of votes and got some comments from our colleagues. But we're going to make the decision here. Okay? Ready, Phil?
I'm ready. Let's hear him.
First one comes from Brian Nelson. Just shuffling the papers around. It's The Ghost of Stash Past. The Ghost of Stash Past. That's from Brian Nelson. Thanks for writing that in, Brian. Greg Morris wrote in Furry Terminator. Also, he said Gary.
Okay.
That was his like second one.
Yep.
So either one of those two wins, he wins. I gave him 2 because Gary was it was funny. Made me laugh. Like Gary. Because it kind of looks like a Gary.
It could be a Gary.
Yeah. When I think of a Gary, I think of that mustache. This is from a person I just said unknown because it was just their email, and their email was weird. But this person wrote in 7 a.m. Shadow.
Okay.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Creative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ryan Hutley wrote in Skimpy McWeekstache. Buddy. And Brian Gottfried wrote in Pecker Duster. And I threw that in there just as an homage to everyone who wrote in with offensive mustache names.
Yeah.
So I threw Pecker Duster in there just to let you know that I read your womb brooms and your other terrible names. But I won't include them here.
No.
I'm withholding those from the contest.
Any dusting I do is not exclusive. I spread it around.
You're an equal opportunity duster.
Wombs or peggers. we can cut
my
we're
God.
cutting this out.
No, we're not cutting this out.
Not a chance.
We have devolved. How much further do you think this podcast can actually devolve? Because it turns into like we have like a ridiculous conversation, and then we get into some serious, like very deep conversation.
See, I don't think. Yeah, this. I'm sure since you have graciously invited me on the show every week, it is not the.
He doesn't want to be here.
It is not.
He's getting paid.
It's not the same show. I'm sure you pitched to like the higher powers to like get this podcast off like made and
Yeah.
So
I was like, I'll have this guy. He's never hunted before. Doesn't know anything about it, but he's got
we're gonna have mustache naming contests and
all kinds of
the
stuff.
like top 5 lists.
Well, I choose Gary.
You choose
That's
Gary.
my pick.
That's
Yeah.
your Gary.
But that stems from a long line of liking to name things like random human names
Yeah.
instead, especially when it comes to like deer.
James.
My wife named our cat Kevin, so we have a cat named Kevin.
They also
It's
have a
good.
dog named
Mango.
Mango.
I like it.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, I like it.
Sam's only saying that because
I like the mustache. I like the, I like
You
the
like
dog
everything.
name. Yeah.
Hey, we should have Sam on more often.
Sam's on your side. I was feeling yesterday, Philly, you were just a little bit dejected about what's going on. You were like, you're turning heel on me. You're just like becoming a little upset about.
No, not at all.
Okay.
No.
I just felt like maybe a vibe that you were just like, you're not happy.
No, I love doing this show every week.
Okay.
That was. Listen, I don't have the energy to not sound sarcastic.
That was awesome. All right. Well, God, I don't know. Is it? I don't think the ghost of Stash passed. I don't.
Yeah, I think it's sure it's fine.
It's worthy of it being in the list, but it's not going to get there. 7 a.m. Shadow is in the same.
That's a good
camp.
one.
It's a good one, but it's just like doesn't make me laugh.
No, and if it were more realistic, it would actually be like it would be the 5 o'clock Shadow, but just the next day, or even a day later.
Yeah.
It's actually worse than they think it is.
Yeah, that's true. Pecker Duster, we're going to write that off. So it's really Furry Terminator or also Gary and Skimpy McWeekstache.
Listen, I can't be mad today. I like Skimpy McWeekstache.
That's pretty good. What kind of reminds me, was it Noah that they had a naming contest for their boat, like the big oceanic cruiser?
That's what
Bodie McBoatface.
for that reason.
Then it actually won. Yeah.
For that reason, Phil, I'm going to ask you to put some like sound effects in here. Like dun 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 dun.
Drum roll.
So please put a drum roll in. We'll wait for that. Skimpy McWeekstache is the winner. Ryan Hutley.
Congrats.
You're going to get a hat and all the affection that a hungover Phil can give you.
Listen, I hate that we're talking about my hangover and it's going to be released into the world, because
Why?
I feel like listen, I'm at work. I'm doing my job. I'm a responsible employee.
No.
But also I feel like there's shame that comes along with
No
it.
shame.
I feel shame.
Don't feel shame, Phil. Don't feel shame at all. I think there's other things to be shameful about. This isn't one of them.
No. The mustache is one.
Yeah, that'd be one. That'd definitely be one. All right, moving on. We've covered that. Skippy McWeekstache. I hope she stays around for a while. Don't shave it off.
We'll see about that.
Don't shave it off after Halloween. Keep it.
Okay, we'll see.
Keep it.
We'll
You're
see.
like a young Tom Selleck.
I don't like having it. I don't like. It's long enough now to the point where I'm very aware of it.
How about this? I'll make a
tickling
deal.
my lips.
Sam, see if you like this. I'll make a deal with you, Phil.
Yes.
If you keep the mustache, we'll do a segment on the show that you can choose what we talk about, and we'll call it Dr. Phil. And you can say whatever you want. You can have listeners write into you. Yeah, this is your time. I make a deal with you. Do you accept my proposal?
Tentatively.
All right.
I really don't like this mustache. I don't even know if it's worth my own segment on the show. But I'll think about it.
You don't want to turn down an
Thanks
offer.
for the offer.
Don't. I've never offered somebody that before.
I'd say it'll grow on you, but it's a terrible dad joke.
Hey. Yeah, where's Remy when we need him?
I know. Remy, honestly.
Honestly.
Sorry, Remy. Sam, we got to turn this thing around. You're doing something really cool. And we've been talking about this for a while now. And I've been telling you how effing awesome it is for some weeks here. Can you just explain to us what's going on?
Yeah. So it's called the Stamp It Forward Project. And it stemmed from way back, really me growing up being a diehard waterfowl hunter.
Yeah.
And then, after transitioning into big game hunting and learning more about conservation and what people can do to give back, you start to learn about all of these conservation tools that are already in place. And one of the simplest, most effective conservation tools that exists is the federal duck stamp program.
Yep.
And the cool thing about it is you don't have to have a hunting license. You don't have to have a hunter safety card. You don't have to be a member of any conservation organization. You don't have to even think about hunting. You can literally either go to a sporting goods store or a post office or hop online, and you can buy a stamp. And by law, 98% of the money from every stamp goes back to purchasing more wetland habitat or conservation easements. Basically, it all gets pumped back into creating more habitat and wildlife.
Yeah. And this is what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says on their website. They say 98% of the purchase price goes directly to help acquire and protect wetland habitat and purchase conservation easements for the National Wildlife Refuge System. Wetlands acquired with duck stamp dollars help purify water, aid in flood control, reduce soil erosion and sedimentation, and enhance outdoor recreation opportunities. It's pretty damn simple.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And above and beyond just helping migratory bird species, it helps, I watched the whole documentary on it, and it helps 700 species overall. I mean, just, what's good for birds is also good for
Was that $1 Million Duck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome
that's a great.
documentary. Yeah.
And so we don't do it on this podcast, but we have someone from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service we're going to get on later in December to talk about the history of the duck stamp. We'll probably have you back on to kind of recap where your project is, but let's get into exactly what's going on.
So the project has evolved really over almost the last year is kind of when I started thinking about it. And it started, my original thought was, how do we just, use quote unquote influencers in the industry to just encourage people to go out and buy a duck stamp, start talking about how cool this conservation tool is. And it seemed like you might lose, it didn't seem like it would be powerful enough to really push people over the top to go do it. And so instead, it evolved into how do we collectively purchase as many stamps as possible, and then it would just be me would be the one going and doing all of the purchasing of the stamps, and so we can keep a complete tally of how many we buy, how much money is raised for conservation. And so on October 7th, I made the first post about it, and what I did is through our company, Public Land Tees, we have a $5 from every item we sell goes directly back to conservation. So we have a donation fund, and I took $2,500 cash out of the donation fund, and I drove around to post offices in different locations and purchased 100 duck stamps. So basically donated $2,500 directly to conservation. And then after I bought that 100, I put together a post and a video encouraging people to send me money directly as just a straight donation as a way to pay it forward or stamp it forward for your fellow sportsmen and women. And with all of the money that I receive, I go out and buy additional duck stamps. So The amount of people that jumped on board on this is unbelievable.
Let me just say this. I was telling you this the other day. In a world where we as marketers, like if I'm being honest, like when you see a contest, when you see somebody like, hey, come hunt with me, or hey, come, that is because somebody wants something from you. You got to give your email, you got to give your information. They're going to use that information to market to you later. That's how it works.
Yep.
If you didn't already know that, now you do. In a world where like just to get someone's email, they're being trained to like want something, win a truck, you see this in the hunting world
all the time,
a day in and day out. Everybody has these extravagant things to give you, right? Nothing is free in this world. So when you're able to do, you'll give folks a number in a minute. When you're able to do what you're doing with no incentive, like the very little incentive other than to pay forward this incredible conservation idea and the function of what the duck stamp is, it's amazing to me. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I was honestly blown away with how like how readily people jumped on board with the whole concept. And so we did the initial 100, and then through the course of the last, I guess, 2.5 weeks that it's been running, simply from straight donations, we've raised enough to buy an additional almost 300 stamps from people just sending me money directly. And then I have 4 companies so far that have jumped on board to match my initial 100 stamp investment.
So what did you say it was? Vortex?
Yep, Vortex, Gerber, Savage Arms, and Boss Shot Shells just jumped on yesterday.
Thank you to those folks.
Yes.
That is, again, like this isn't who's sponsored by who or what company. I mean, this is, if you give to this movement, you're just giving to conservation. And I don't give a shit if you're sponsored or not, or you're involved or not. It is it's an act that is altruistic.
Yeah. So at this point, we are close to I've purchased 400 so far, and then the other 400 will come as soon as that money hits the bank.
That's awesome.
So yeah, up to almost 800 stamps.
Man. And listen, if you're listening to this and you have $25, give it to Sam. Like, for a lot of reasons, right? You could go out and buy your own stamp and give it to your neighbor. It doesn't really matter.
Yep.
But what really matters is the idea that we're true to our word as hunters when we stand on top of conservation like it's a platform. Well, if it's going to be a platform, we're going to stand on top of it, and we're going to use it as a reason why we do what we do. We could give to something a little bit bigger than just $25, and that's what I think this is. It's bigger than just $25. It's bigger than just giving a stamp to someone else. It's an understanding of that we can share this with other people, and thank God the federal government has basically enacted a tax to allow us to kind of express what we believe, and that's what you're doing.
Yep. Yeah, and like the only people that are required to purchase a federal duck stamp every year are people that waterfowl hunt.
Yeah.
So obviously growing up every year, I had bought a waterfowl stamp, and but again, it's something that every single person can do, whatever, regardless if you hunt or not.
And I was reading some other stuff from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The federal duck stamp is also a free pass to any national wildlife refuge that charges an entry fee.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big thing that I didn't really ever realize. As a hunter, you just it's a transactional thing, right?
Yep.
All duck stamp proceeds are used to conserve habitat for birds and other wildlife. So birders, nature photographers, outdoor enthusiasts can buy stamps to go towards these things. But if you're a hunter, as we always tout as hunters, you're buying this stamp and it's going to other things. It's helping habitat across the board. Sure, it helps migratory birds and ducks that we hunt and geese that we hunt, but by God, it helps everyone.
Right.
And not to mention, there's really cool stories about like the artists behind the duck stamp and the history of the duck stamp. And like I said, in a future podcast, we'll cover those. But like the idea of this, it's the best conservation program going.
Well, thank you.
I think so.
Yeah. No, I would agree.
I think so.
Yeah.
And if you're not a wildlife biologist and you're not out there working on conservation projects and you want to call yourself a conservationist, there's other ways to be one, and that's what Sam is doing.
Right.
Like he's promoting the idea of conservation, the transactional idea of it, but also the engendering passion for donating to the cause. And the federal duck stamp is one of the few taxes that is unanimously raised whenever they need it.
Right.
Nobody's voting against the raising of the duck stamp tax.
Yeah.
The folks that are being taxed, in fact, would probably all say, give it a raise. We don't care.
Yeah.
$28 is fine.
Yeah. So then on top of all the money we've raised, just to simply purchase stamps as a way to generate even more for conservation, we are currently, I don't know when this podcast will come out, but we'll still have stamps available. We are currently giving away a duck stamp with every single item purchased at publiclandtees.com. So through that, we've generated another chunk of money that we're going to be able to donate directly back to conservation.
So, yeah, man, go buy a T-shirt. You can wear the T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Give that duck stamp to someone, but don't just give it to them. Tell them about what we're talking about right now.
Right.
Tell 'em about
Educate
it.
somebody else. Give it to anybody you want. Some stranger on the street.
Doesn't
Just
matter.
educate
I've
somebody.
been telling Sam, I'm like, just take them
Yeah.
and like go places and give them to people and explain what this is, because what this is an example of what we talk about with our model of conservation. The last, since 1936, all these things have built up over time that have been positive for wildlife conservation.
And we will be donating a good chunk of them to different organizations for first-time hunters or whatever it might be, just to kind of pay it forward that way.
Yeah, I mean, and the idea of pay it forward, like if it was me, I'd wear the T-shirt, I'd put the stamp in my wallet, and when someone came up to me and questioned me about hunting, I would take that stamp out, I would hand it to them, and I would explain to them what's going on. And like that's what this could be if we allow it to be.
Right.
These things aren't just $25 passes to any national wildlife refuge. They're like a little piece of history that you can hand over and be like, hey, look, here's what's up.
Yep. Exactly.
And tell these people that. And that's why, if you're listening to this, just go to your Instagram page.
Yep. Go to my Instagram page. It's all on there. I mean, I could tell them exactly how to send me money directly if you want me to.
Please do that, yeah.
So if you'd like to donate directly, you can either send me money either at PayPal, which is just publiclandtees@gmail.com, or my Venmo account, which is just at Sam Soholt. So,
yeah, you're Venmoing a guy money, right?
Yep.
You're just going to give him $25,
Yep.
and he's going to go buy stamps, and he's going to spread the word, right? So feel free to spread it yourself, my God, but if you let Sam do it for you, there's a lot of benefits that we'll all see through this. And I've always thought that, when I watched $1 Million Duck for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
I was just struck by how much I didn't know about this thing that I was got to get my stamp.
Right.
And there's so much I didn't know. Similar with the Endangered Species Act, similar with Pittman-Robertson, similar with all like the Lacey Act, similar with all of these legislations that have kind of marked the way that we do what we love.
Mm-hmm.
Understand more about them, and you'll be empowered to spread the word.
Yep. Exactly.
What do you think about that, Phil?
Amen.
I like hungover Phil. It's a simpler answer. He doesn't know. So how much? Like, what are you have? How much have you raised thus far?
So last night, actually, we cracked 19,000 raised so far. So
That's awesome.
Which is roughly 760 stamps. But I think I had another $150 roll in this morning on Venmo. So it just keeps kind of piling in. As more people share it, it just continues to grow.
Do you have any plans to like do some? Because I've been telling you, like do some events, do some things where you just hand out duck stamps to whoever shows up.
Yeah, I don't have any plans
I'm
right
putting you
now.
on the hook for that.
Yeah, I
That's
don't
what
have any
I'm
plans
doing.
right now, but I definitely want to do some things like that.
Yeah.
And whether it be this year that I do that, but this Stamp It Forward project is not going to stop this fall. Like I have much larger plans for 2020. So
Yeah, I mean, we have Suzanne Fellows. We're scheduled to record with Suzanne Fellows here later this year, and she's works for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and we talked to her briefly. Corinne, our podcast producer, and I talked to her briefly, and her passion about the duck stamp was like coming through the phone. So I look forward to traveling to D.C. and talk to her. So we'll have you back when we
Awesome.
have Brianne on.
yeah,
Or Suzanne, I'm sorry. Suzanne on to talk about it, and we'll see where you are. But if you're listening to this, like you said, I've already kind of said my piece about this, but there's like an example that Sam is setting for everybody that is important. Like we all talk about conservation, and it is kind of a groundswell within our world. Mm-hmm. We also all talk about public lands. We all talk about these concepts, that are important to us. But here is a guy sitting across from me that is doing something about it. And it's not that you have to go pick up trash on public land. You could just raise people's awareness for these important constructs of our system. And Sam has done that with the public land bus, and now the public land van, and now Stamp It Forward.
Yep.
And it's like, if our world needed marketing, this is the kind of marketing that it needs, and the kind of activism, in my opinion, that it needs. So thank you, Sam.
well, thank you.
So go and do it. Go give Sam $25. If you don't want to give Sam $25, go buy a duck stamp and just tell somebody what it means and what it is and why it's important and why no other country that I'm aware of has a system like that.
Yeah, I guess I haven't done the research, but
Me either, but I'm just going to say it.
I think Canada does have a federal stamp.
Whatever,
as well.
that's not America.
But, they fall under the, North American model of conservation, so it would make sense.
Listen, the federal stamp image of this year's is a wood duck, right?
Yep, wood duck in the foreground and then a decoy in the background. A guy named Scott Storm did the painting, and he was kind enough to actually send me a selfie video of him basically talking about the duck stamp and the importance of the duck stamp that I was able to post on my Instagram story. So,
and here's the other thing: when you do something like what Sam's doing, you don't know what it's going to actually do in the end. Like you're not sure what it's going to bring to you. Like when you do something good like this, it brings all these weird ancillary things that you just didn't expect. All these connections with people and companies and things. And so follow this man's example and go do something impactful. Even if you have a small following, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So it's important, right?
That's right.
Phil?
Yes.
Skippy McWeekstache? All right, that's it. We good on that, Sam?
We're good on that.
We're going to go elk hunt. You're going to come back later and you're going to tell us. I want 6 figures out of this son of a bitch. I want it to be $100,000 in the bank by the time you come back in late December.
That would be amazing. Yep, that would be amazing.
Help. Pass this forward. Go to Sam's Instagram page and find out more and stamp it forward. Do it. Anyway, there's a lot of good things that we need to talk about, but before we get to Clay Newcomb and our conversational bear baiting, we need to get to the third installment of Work Sharp's Not So Sharp Moments. Phil, play the jingle.
Work sharp, not so sharp moments, sharp so you don't have to be.
Okay, we got a good not so sharp moment this time, Phil, and it's from a female listener. Her name is Kaylee Howard.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. Before we get to Kaylee, though, real quick, honorable mention: Michael Posey wrote in a poem, and I figured I'd read it. It's not. Phil and I decided it's not good enough to be a not so sharp moment winner, but I should read it anyway.
Yeah, we appreciate the creativity.
It's a winner in our hearts, but just not in our minds. So here it goes. Here we go. Covered in camo with fresh Joe in my mug. The boat starts to sink. We forgot the plug. Half hour later, at the cold break of dawn, ducks came in, but my safety's on. Fix all of this and go take a pee. Forgot to pull the waders all the way to my knee. Frustrated and cold, I head back to the truck. A bad day of hunting is still fun as fuck.
Bravo.
The end.
That's
Bravo. Good. Bravo. Rhyming the word truck with the word fuck.
Put it on a greeting card.
Yeah, it's always good. Now, thank you, Michael, for writing in. If you guys want to try to match his poetic genius there, please do. I like reading poems. I like rhymes. I'm a simple man. So, write him in. But honorable mention goes to Michael Posey. But now, Kaylee Howard, the winner of a brand new Work Sharp Field Sharpener. And here's the beginning of the story. She says, "Listen, boys, I know that subjects in this story might be a little uncomfortable for your main audience. But I am a female outdoorsman, and by golly, there isn't enough literature on or coverage of female hunters. But I follow the Meat Eater Company with a passion because you all try your very, very best to include women of all backgrounds and professions. And for that, I thank and congratulate you all. With that being said, in a roundabout way, I feel obligated to share this story so your female followers can laugh themselves into rib cramps."
I'm excited. I have not heard this.
All right. Enjoy my not so sharp moment and try to think how funny this would be even if this happened to your wives for the men out there. I grew up on a farm and ranch in the panhandle of Texas. Imagine a girl with no siblings and a father who likes to hunt. Think of a girl whose favorite pastime was to get out of sports practice, drive home, grab her Youth Edition 20-gauge Benelli, and see what she could get into. Well, this particular story starts on a Wednesday, September 1st to be exact. Texas's opening day of dove season, the first bird season of the year. I was about as enthralled as a girl can get. Because my dad ran cattle, we naturally had barbed wire fences all over the ranch. I had noticed that the dove on the ranch naturally congregated on the fence where the seed Milo was. It was going to be easy pickings. I played volleyball at the time, so when my coach let out practice, I didn't even change my clothes, i.e. volleyball spandex, a sports bra, and a workout tank top. I ran home, grabbed my cowboy boots, a box of shells, and my shotgun. The field was only a quarter of a mile from the house, so I decided to just walk it. Now, Phil, can you picture what we're doing here? We're walking through a field. We got spandex on.
On the way to a fence.
Yeah, on the way to a fence. You see where this might be going?
Yeah, shooting fish in a barrel.
Barbed wire fence.
Yeah.
See where this might be going?
Boy, yep.
Scratch that. I sprinted to the fence line. Earlier that day, I had a morning workout consisting of 85% of my max of squats and deadlifts. So needless to say, my legs were worn out to start with. A little humble brag. I like it. When I got to the fence line, I thought to myself, I'm an athlete. I'm just going to climb that fence without setting my gun down or holding onto a post.
Yep.
Well, that was all fine until I fell while swinging my second leg over and my leg strength gave out. I had tried to jump and the wire had slipped out from under my boot. I lifted my gun above my head and spun in midair to save the shotgun from the barbed wire below. My chest had made contact with the wire as I spun.
No. You all know how Steven Ranella loves a good nipple ripping story.
Woo!
Is that where this is going?
I don't know. When I landed, I was on my back on the ground. I inspected my shotgun, and to my relief, it didn't have a scratch on it. Then I realized I had warm liquid running down my stomach. I looked down and saw that the barbed wire had caught me and sliced into my tank top bra and smack dab through the middle of my boob. My cut was about a half a centimeter deep, running about 3 inches long.
Ow.
I fainted and hit the ground like a ton of bricks. When I came to my senses, I laid on the ground and cried like a wounded animal for God knows how long. A teenage girl is quite sensitive to subjects such as these. After what was probably an unacceptable amount of time, I slowly made my way back to the house. In my haste to get to the field, I left my cell phone and couldn't contact anyone to come and save me. When I got back to the house, I found my mother cooking dinner, and mid-sentence she broke off with a scream of terror. That was fast, Kaylee. Did you already run out of... Ow! That's how it's written. I will never forget that scream. She called my dad and explained basically that I was going to be unfit for marriage. And that she was taking me to the only hospital in the county. I begged her to take me anywhere besides the medical facility where I knew everyone. But she insisted that I had lost blood and there was no time to waste. When we arrived in the ER in my hometown, I was draped in a towel and stood horrified as my mother explained the predicament to the receptionist, nurses, and the doctor on call that night, which to my sheer delight just so happened to be my best friend's dad. He had me take off my ripped clothing, he cleaned the wound, and stitched my poor, maimed breast back together. I don't think I will ever be as embarrassed again in my entire life. The next day, I had to explain to my coach why I couldn't practice. Slowly, ever so slowly, the story of little girl Hunter who defiled her body spread around my town. At 10 a.m., I had a teacher ask if I was in too much pain and needed to go home. I had the ass of my school asked if I was going to enter the rifle competition in the Paraplegic Olympics. It was a joyous day. Let's fast forward to the night when my now husband and I decided to get frisky for the first time, Phil.
All right.
You into it?
Yeah, this is the whole reason I came onto this podcast, is for stories like these. You know me.
This is getting, all right, it's a little get hot. I was terrified for him to see the carnage that was under my clothes. With careful inspection and grace in his voice, he said, I will call that one Scarface. That's when
better than Skimpy McWeek's weak boob. Sorry.
That's when I knew I would marry that man. I've never hunted dove again, and I don't think I ever will. But my shotgun is still in mint condition.
That's what matters.
The end.
Great job.
Play the jingle.
Work sharp, not so sharp moments, sharp so you don't have to be.
Boy, Phil.
It's not good. Woo! You know, the funny thing about these work sharp, not so sharp moments is that most of them are actually turned out to be have some sharp elements.
Yeah. This one did.
Yes, it did.
A lot of interesting visuals throughout that tale. So thank you, Kaylee. WorkSharp is proudly going to send to you a brand new WorkSharp field sharpener. So enjoy that. And keep sending in your not-so-sharp moments. This one is so far my favorite. It's going to be hard to top it. But thc@themeateater.com, if you send your own, you can top Kaylee. You could win.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there because they're great and they're super friendly and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
All right, here we go. We got Clay Newcomb, and we're going to talk about bears and baiting. You know, we didn't really drink much whiskey, but we'll call it Whiskey and Ethics because I like the name. Right, Phil? I do what I want.
It's good. You know, you could have, it was 9 a.m.
It was.
You could have imbibed and
I had a little beer later on.
Call it a day changer.
Yeah, Yeah, but I had responsibilities.
But yes, it was responsible.
So, bear baiting in general, with a pretty interesting fellow, Clay Newcomb, coming up right now. Enjoy.
I guess I grew up on an older road. A pedal to the
Hey, Clay.
Hello, Ben.
You were just telling me that you, every time that you have had a thought about bears, you wrote it down on your phone.
That's right, and I'm looking at that list right now.
That's a long list, man.
Yeah. No, just as we were going to talk about the topic at hand.
Yes.
The last 10 days or so, I've been formalizing some thoughts.
I like it.
Yeah. All things that are not new to me, but sometimes when you write it down as a writer, when you write something, it formulates itself and becomes sharper and more clear.
It's the best way to codify something. I find, and the things that I know the most about and actually learned and can repeat are the articles I've written. You know, because you spend all this time crafting these words and then you remember them.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes somebody's like, well, tell me about this. I'll know the most about a subject.
You go, well, let me get my phone.
Yeah, let me get a phone.
Let
Hold
me
on,
read you
I'll
my
just read you my article. I'll read you my article.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about bears for sure, because you listen to some. We were just talking about you listen to the Barry Gilbert episode, so you know that you're probably going to threaten to leave pretty soon.
Well,
I don't have anything to slam.
Yeah. Well, we can give you a book if you want to
Okay.
throw it at me about halfway through. But we're also want to talk about baiting. I think there's a larger topic in baiting, but I think baiting in general, a lot of times in many states, baiting is illegal for whitetails and other animals.
Yeah.
But bear baiting has a culture going back to the 19th century. And so I think that's the best. If you're going to talk about the ethical connotations of baiting, it's proper to do it around bears, just for the many reasons that if you're going to pick, just like we did a whiskey and ethics on grip and grins, you're going to pick kind of the most topical and maybe controversial piece of the puzzle when it comes to these issues.
Right.
And so that's why I think bear baiting kind of lands in a good spot in that regards.
It definitely would be. It's the easiest thing to misunderstand, really, in hunting.
Yeah, it really is. I was doing a little bit of my own research yesterday looking at this now, and if you go to bear baiting on Wikipedia, which if you Google bear baiting, that's the first thing that comes up. The line that describes it is this: bear baiting is a blood sport involving the worrying or tormenting, in quotation marks, baiting of bears. It may involve pitting a bear against another animal. That's what bear baiting refers to. Now, I think, and as you read
I can't even understand. I don't even have a place to understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, and there's a historical context to that. But still, for the layman, bear baiting in the modern sense is not the 19th century or even in this case 17th century version of bear baiting. So even in historical context, it's a little bit confused.
Yes.
It's a little bit confused. So can you just give folks your history? I mean, what you do now and a little bit of your history with bear hunting in particular.
Well, so what I do for a living, Ben, is I publish Bear Hunting Magazine.
Yeah.
So Bear Hunting Magazine's been in print for 20 years, and I have run Bear Hunting Magazine for the last 7 years. And so, but that didn't spin from a place of it's not just a vocation. I mean, I've been bear hunting a long time and am passionate about bear hunting. And it's a massively misunderstood part of the hunting, the hunting space. It truly is. And I have some thoughts as we go on. I don't want to dive into the depth of my notes here right off the bat, but
give us your notes.
Give us the notes. But I think in some ways hunters have given in. There's been like a shifting baseline for us to kind of give in to some of the emotional propaganda surrounding hunting charismatic megafauna. These bears, and so. Yeah, is that a good description, Ben, of my history? I mean, it wasn't that great.
Yeah, that was a good description. I think that you were on the Meat Eater podcast recently, and you did a really good job of kind of articulating some of these perspectives. And folks who have listened to this have heard me talk about fair chase and ethics a lot. And I think it bears repeating that, the Boone and Crockett has a fair chase ethics statement on baiting, which they updated recently. To be a little bit more accepting of the practice. And it's one of the more, when you think about it, it's one of the more conflicting issues within our space, because there are legitimate consequences of the unnatural collection of animals, but there's also ethical advantages to collecting those animals so you can judge them and be closer to them and more ethical when you kill them. And so when I describe this, I'm always, much like other issues, or just kind of have to be flat honest. My opinion is always that I would say that it's conflicting for me. When I think of my own personal ethics, I think of baiting as a tool to be a more ethical hunter. When I think of the culture and the way it's looked at, I think, I'm not sure overall if this is something that we can carry into the future. But I would just be honest in saying that it's a confliction within me.
Yeah. Here's the baseline position that I start on when we talk about baiting. Baiting is a management tool for wildlife managers who have the best interests of wildlife, who have the best interests of bears, who want bear populations to thrive and coexist with massive human populations and massive human intrusion into these places that were formerly wild bear habitat. So baiting is a management tool for managers to be able to extract, like a surgeon extracting something out of a human body. I mean, there's a measured amount that these people need to take out. And then in, let's just say 80% of North America, spot and stalk hunting or bear hunting without the use of any hounds or bait just would not be able to achieve those management goals. To me, that's the biggest point that people need to understand. So, because I think people tend to think that where baiting is legal, it's like the game and fish agencies are just like, hey, let's give these old fat guys an easy way to shoot a bear.
Yeah.
That's not it at all. Like in Arkansas, like Myron Means, the bear coordinator for Arkansas, talked to him just a few weeks ago, and they made a decision in 2001 that the way they wanted to manage bears in Arkansas was over bait and with the use of bow hunters in the early season. That was a strategic decision that they made. And so, and to quantify or to qualify the statement about 80% of North America spot and stalk hunting couldn't achieve those goals is that, much of the North American continent is the eastern deciduous forest and the boreal forest, which is thick vegetation. And so those places, I mean, if you're going to harvest bears through hunting, then bait is a very good way to do it. And like in Arkansas, we can't bait on public land. We can only bait on private land. So private land is where bear conflict happens. That's where people are having trouble. So they're like, hey, let's give these private landowners a way to manage these bears. And so that's the way we roll. Now out here, you can, in many places, you can bait on public land, and it's kind of a different ordeal.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the baseline. Like if anybody wants to have a conversation about the ethics of bear hunting, to me, that's where it starts, is that this is a management tool. This is not just a slob hunter's way to hunt. And I've never heard anybody that has actually baited bears themselves. I'm not talking about going on an outfitted hunt, which I got no problem with that and do it myself. But I've never heard anybody that has baited bears themselves, put in the work, the strategy, understood it, studied it, ever come away thinking, man, that was easy.
Yeah.
Man, that was kind of...
Oh, you just put the corn out, they come walking right in.
Yeah. It's much more in depth than that. And especially if your own personal ethics are at a level where well, I find ways to limit myself in other ways when I hunt over bait. Yeah. I really do.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason I use traditional archery when I hunt over bait.
I was going to say exactly that.
I mean, this wouldn't be for anybody. I shoot them with a gun over bait. But for me, that's the way it's kind of like a give and take. It's like...
Yeah, and it's interesting to see, like, I was just reading as you were talking a little bit of the position that the Boone and Crockett came out with recently that was an update of their fair chase position. And they said, baiting can increase hunter success by helping them to locate game, especially nocturnal species and game that inhabits a continuous, dense understory that makes successful harvest numbers difficult to achieve. Baiting allows a hunter to be more selective as it permits them to conduct a closer inspection of an animal to determine its age and sex prior to harvest. This is particularly important when it is discouraged or illegal to take young animals or females with young of a species such as black or grizzly bear, where the sex and age is not as easily discernible as with other species.
Right.
That's a pretty cogent and well thought out way to look at that, the advantages here. And and when we look at this, there's sometimes, like you said, we get in the trap of something doesn't feel right. If I was to play devil's advocate, I think a lot of hunters would say, like, well, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Well, fuck that. Like, at the end of the day, we very much have to be pragmatic in the way we view these things. Yeah. It might not feel right for you. That's okay. Then don't do it.
Yeah.
But as a practice of management, as a tool for wildlife managers, it's very hard to look at the facts with baiting in certain situations to say it's no good.
Right.
I mean, there just isn't for me.
Well, the other thing is that what a big argument is people say that it's unnatural. Like you're altering this animal's habits. You're inputting some resource that's making him do something different than he would do if you hadn't done it.
Yep.
Well, I see that, but it's not entirely true because a black bear in Arkansas, he utilizes a white oak ridge the exact same way that he utilizes a bait site. He is designed to gather 12 months worth of groceries in 8 months. Yep. He is designed to eat. He's got a huge gut. He's got a huge mouth. He's got big teeth. I mean, like everything about him is designed to input resource. And so when you put out bait, you're capitalizing on something that he's already doing, which is utilizing a resource until it's gone. And so, and Ranella said that as well. He talked about, like if there's a whale washed up on the beach in Alaska and you shoot a brown bear over that whale, is that natural? You're capitalizing on something that bear is already doing.
Yeah.
And, that's just a,
well, a lot of states are against baiting. And I was reading about in the Alabama's wildlife thing and what they were kind of questions about baiting. And they said, well, why are they against baiting but not supplemental feeding? When I started reading this, I'm like, wow, okay. Baiting significantly elevates the chance of disease transmission in 2 ways compared to deer feeding and food plots. And this is specifically for deer. Baiting causes deer to feed in a very small area where they are in frequent direct contact with each other. Even when deer do not feed nose-to-nose at bait piles or stations, baiting causes them to feed in virtually the exact same place where deer have fed previously.
right.
And then another thing, I think that matters that within the bear baiting, or a question for you is, do you see deer coming to bear bait sites?
Very, very rarely. I mean, you'd get the odd picture of a deer just passing through, but not at all. I mean,
you're not putting any food there that they're interested in.
There's so much, maybe somebody would be baiting with corn or something that deer might be interested in, but there's so much other foreign smell there that, I've never had a deer walk up. Wow. And, talking about the conversation between baiting bear and baiting deer, there could be some commonality if we were just talking about the overarching topic of baiting, but really they're very different. There are concerns now with congregating deer.
Yeah.
Also, habitat concerns with baiting deer year round and them, hammering down on the native plant species that are most palatable to them. So, you have a spot that you're baiting for 10 years in a row, which people do for sure. In 2 years, everywhere within a quarter mile of that spot, all the good stuff the natural browse is going to be depleted. The stuff they don't want to eat is going to increase. Mm-hmm. You quit baiting, then all of a sudden you've got this, you've got habitat that's not great for. There's other concerns inside that which don't really play over inside a bear. Bear baiting is typically a very short-lived thing. Like in Arkansas, we can bait for 30 days before season. Most people are baiting for a very short time. So it's not like this animal is becoming dependent upon this or it's changing them that dramatically.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing to think of, and a lot of state game departments will and wildlife managers will talk about supplemental feeding, for an ungulate like a deer, and that supplemental feeding could be a food plot. It could be somehow you've changed the landscape to add more food for that animal, right? So you've mostly what they'll say is a food plot, right? A food plot is, in quote unquote, in their mind, supplemental feeding. I don't know that when we're managing wildlife, we can be so finite. Supplemental feeding, you're changing in both of these instances, whether you're putting out, grain or syrup or donuts or whatever for bears, or you're putting out a pile of corn for deer, or you're planting soybeans, or you're planting some sort of seasonal food plot for deer. You're changing the landscape in such a way that there's going to change everything that a deer does, really. You're manipulating the landscape to manipulate the animal. And would it be that baiting then is just a lazier way to do it? Maybe, if you're switching it to deer, but it's certainly beyond the deer disease transmission argument. Things just start to fall apart with baiting, especially with bears, man. I think. And so, do you Have you thought about, like, when you bring your kids up doing this, like, you explain this to them? How do you talk to them about?
Man, I talk very candidly and openly with my kids about why we bait, because I kind of live in two different worlds, because I love to bait bear. I mean, to me, it's the way to. Well, let me even back up. I'm going to get to my kids.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, we hunted public land for whitetails, and we were constantly looking for that hot spot, which for us was a white oak acorn tree, raining acorns with deer coming into it. This hot spot. Yep. I mean, like 5 times when I was a kid, my dad would have. I mean, very rarely would we really find what we were looking for, and it was a hot spot. When we started baiting bear when I was younger, it was like, man, we're making our own hot spot, which, plays into the ethics thing maybe, but that's why it became so exciting and fun. So I love to bait bears because you are creating an opportunity. Yeah. You are. I'm talking about how I live in two different worlds. I live in that world, but I also love, and probably my favorite type of hunting is what I call slip hunting or spot and stalk hunting.
Yeah.
I mean, just bear hunting in national forests without the use of bait or hounds. I call it the sheep hunt of the South in Arkansas. It's the toughest hunt that I know of, for real. In terms of actual success, you turn 100 hunters loose in Arkansas and say, how many of you are going to be able to kill a bear with a bow? Just go hunt them. Very low odds of success versus really almost any hunt in North America. I mean, so it's a tough hunt. I love that hunt. So my kids have grown up with this, these two things that I do that I've been very clear with them about. One of my sons, my older son, he'll be 14. We made a decision 4 years ago when his siblings were killing bear over bait. I drew him aside and I said, tell you what, how about you not hunt over bait? And how about you set a goal that in the next 8 years, you'll kill a bear in national forest, just hunting with me like I do. And I mean, his eyes lit up, and it was like he got it because he knew that it was harder, it was more difficult. And in our family, we add more value to a hunt that is like that. At the same time, we celebrate hunting bear over bait. My daughter killed a very nice bear just 3 or 4 weeks ago after passing 11 bears that most grown men would have shot. I mean, I'm telling you, she passed 11 bears over 2 years, and I limited. She limited herself. I was like, if we're gonna hunt over bait, we're gonna wait for the right bear. And so they get it. They get these nuanced things that we do, and I don't know if that answers your question, but they know. It's not like we're just.
It does, and I think it's that there's very important perspective in that, because I've had a lot of hunters in here, a lot of people with perspectives that are outside both our country and our model of conservation, that can talk about in other cultures historically, and then European cultures, and hunters are revered because of their selectivity. Yeah. They're revered because they have to have knowledge of the outdoors, they have to have knowledge of the natural world, they have to have knowledge of the game that they're pursuing. If they don't have that knowledge, they couldn't accurately select the proper animal to remove. Yeah. It's a natural resource, right? It's this is what we're doing. And so when you're talking about that rings true to me, that your kids are learning about the animal. They're learning about where it lives, what it does, how to be selective around the taking of one.
Yes.
Is it a male or female? How old is it? Why does it have to be old as opposed to young? All those things, I think, are paramount to what hunting is at a core level of conservation, because you can't really be part of conservation if you're not understanding the removal of one animal or another. And so when you talk about that, it strikes to me very similar to we had a guy, Dusan Smetana, in here. I've said this probably a lot, but he talked about he grew up in Czechoslovakia, and he talked about the hunter being so revered for their knowledge of the natural world and what they could do.
Well, see, the situation with my daughter, she's 16 now, and she killed a bear over bait when she was 13. And then we hunted 2 years in a very difficult location where we had to pack in bait on our mules and do a bunch of stuff. that was just difficult. And she saw more, she had more, if I could use the word, intimate interaction with bear than most people will have in a lifetime.
Yeah.
She really did. I mean, we watched bears for 8 hours a day. I mean, this place where we were hunting was great. We watched bear interactions. We watched sows with cubs. We saw older age class boars. And that experience that she had there over bait is something that you would never have gotten in decades of hunting in the national forest. And so the experience that she got, and she was highly selective, took an older age male that she eventually took. You know, it was a win for conservation. It was a win for us in the amount of, she had to exercise a lot of restraint inside of that, which is, I think, a good character discipline.
Yeah.
And likewise, my other son, who honestly, I chose him to give this proposition to him because I saw in him a real burning fire for what I perceive to be, it's like, yeah, he doesn't need to be gratified too quick. And anyway, he has not killed a bear, even though both his siblings have. And there's different ways to regulate these things in terms of limiting yourself.
Man, I start to realize that these things that on their faces don't seem, fair. We always use the term fair in terms of hunting. I'm growing to not like using the term fair,
right?
Especially fair chase. I feel like it just doesn't quite have the right connotation. What I'm learning is all these things are kind of in the hands of the particular hunter. Like baiting in your hands, hands of somebody who is thoughtful, ethical, knowledgeable about where you're living and what you're doing. In your hands, baiting is like a wonderful tool to not only teach, but to manage populations and to better understand the animal that dies at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, in the hands of a lazy asshole, baiting might be just a way to dump a bunch of corn on the ground and shoot that buck that you haven't been able to get after. So it's an interesting, all of these things, especially when it comes to fair chase, and you can see it in Boone and Crockett's recent position. It came out in August that I was just reading from. It's kind of like they go back and forth. Some, they talk about it. All of this kind of depends on how you were raised and what tradition in which you were raised, and how you view this ridiculously variable thing that we do called hunting.
Right.
The other thing I was thinking of, the last time we did an ethical conversation on whiskey and ethics, we talked about grip and grins, and I said, I was telling Steve Ranella that and Miles Nolte, that I feel like, for me, I'm just going to take grip and grins and put them aside, not do them. I'm willing to give that up because I know that there's been instances where it's not been the greatest for hunting. Now, I could probably say the same thing about baiting, and I could probably also say the same thing about other ethical, hounds, for example.
Yeah.
I could say, oh, well, hounds, people don't like it, so we're not going to do it. Baiting, people don't like it, so we're not going to do it. And I see that whole sliding scale argument when it comes to those kind of limiting points of view, which mine was for grip and grins. But when I look at this, I say we have to be able to separate all that stuff and say bear baiting in the hands of a really good practitioner is a really good thing.
Yeah.
And that's just being pragmatic.
I think the issue is even bigger than that, though, Ben. So I think a lot of people would just say, hey, why don't we just not bait?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, you got your family circle, and then there's those cousins that are just kind of a little bit on the outside of the circle, and it's how about we just not invite them to the party? They're giving us a bad name. It's not that simple.
Yeah.
It's really not that simple, because only in the last 50 years have humans decided that using hounds was unethical. I was reading last night, they believe the first dogs were domesticated 15,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Pretty much 100% for the use of hunting and protection. And dogs have even evolved to be this animal that has the most emotional connection to humans of any other animal because of, the dogs that were connected to their master were more likely to be fed and more likely to be bred. And I mean, so like part of being a modern human is to have a connection with a dog.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And for people all of a sudden to say, hey, what you've been doing for the last 15,000 years that has built mankind, you shouldn't do that anymore because it's bad. It's really pretty bizarre in a lot of ways. And we can talk about hounds. I would love to. And so there's this shifting baseline.
Yeah.
And I think there's a place where hunters, like, I am all for what I see happening in the hunting community where we're becoming better at PR.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm there. It's like we have to show ourselves as thoughtful and as conservationists. But there's also this place where we can't be given into the trends of modern society that is not congruent with who we are as humans.
Yeah.
And so here, Ben, this is most of my notes on my phone are about this phrase called guard the gate, which to me, so bear hunting is easily the lowest rung on the ladder for the anti-hunting community or for the non-anti-hunting community, the people that don't know anything that say, oh, you're baiting bears? Well, that, they don't understand it. Bear hunting is the lowest rung on the ladder. Bear hunting is the gate for the anti-hunting community to come into our space. So a lot of people would say, well, let's just not do that. Well, we know that the anti-hunting strategy is incrementalism.
Yep.
And if in 25 years there is no place left to bait bears in North America and they've outlawed hound hunting 100%, they will be after elk hunting with calls. I mean, your kids will be fighting against guys that say, man, they go out in the woods with elk calls. They use these tubes, and they blow, and it sounds just like an elk. And the elk come running, and they kill them. Barbarians! I mean, like, and it's hard to think like that, but it's true. And so that's why, to me, for us as a hunting community, to gather around something that's a little bit uncomfortable, but is massively a part of our humanity that we can't give. We can't be trendy about this.
Yeah.
Like,
That's right.
I've got dark frame glasses and I'm wearing a cool hat. We can't be trendy though about bear hunting.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I think you're 100% right. And I think looking at the history of some of these things and like what they mean to our culture and kind of like the way things are being peeled back, that's where I come off. And Steve and I talk about this even after we record that grip and grin podcast. I'm like, well, grip and grins aren't an old, like they go back to, say, Teddy
people
Roosevelt.
just used not to grin.
Yeah, they used not to grin.
They used to just frown.
This old practice that's been changed so much by the modern technology of social media. It's been changed and morphed to a point where it's not what it was and it never will be again.
Yeah.
But bear baiting is not that. Like bear baiting, again, I'll go back to in the hands of somebody that values it and uses it as a tool is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a good thing. And it can always be that, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at the state of California, they are basically, you hold them up as they're pretty analogous to what folks on the other side might want hunting to be eventually. Don't hunt predators, can't trap them, can't run hounds for them, you can't bait for them. They'll be after bears before long there.
You effectively shut down bear hunting in most places if you eliminate bait and hounds. There's really very few places where spot and stalk hunting can achieve management goals.
Yep.
So I mean, basically by taking that out, you're taking the knees out of bear hunting. You're totally taking the knees out.
Yeah, so. And I think these I bring up grip and grins because I think these things are all analogous. They're kind of all in the same thing. Right. As you say, guard the gate. There's two ways to guard the gate, right? There's one, guard the gate to say we're going to stand up for the things we've always done, right? And the other way to guard the gate would be we're going to change and shift with the culture in appropriate ways, right? We'll trim the fat in our hunting culture.
And that's what I think, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Why don't we have this very, very strong narrative that's on the lips of everybody? Yeah. And what I see inside of people is that even hardcore hunters that are in our space and on our side are almost like shamed in some way to talk about, like hunting a bear over bait or using hounds. And I mean, especially on social media, It's like there's this underlying thing like, is this okay? And that's where I feel like we're pandering to a false argument and false propaganda. Yeah. So we're giving into it. And I'm not saying we got to put it in people's face. I'm really not. I mean, if you know me, that's not what I do. But I feel like the hunting world is giving into it. I think the baseline is shifting, and we're paralleling it in a lot of ways. We're paralleling that shift. Like, well, you know what? Baiting bears is kind of, it is kind of this, or it is kind of that. Or using hounds is kind of this or that.
And that's why, hopefully, there's many people that will listen to this can understand. I had a buddy send me an article that he wrote recently about, is social media dividing hunters? Was the hypothesis of this article. And I'm like, well, no, it's not dividing hunters. Hunters are always divided. All is it doing is giving us access to the perspective of people that are in different places in our country. Hunting in the South was always divided from hunting in the West. Always. Yeah. The cultures are different. The people are different. The perspectives are different. Social media and this new way of connecting each other is only amplifying our understanding of those perspectives. That's all it's doing. It's not dividing us, right? And so when you're talking about kind of moving with the baseline, I think it all depends on where you are. Yeah. For me, I've been part of this podcast, and just what I want to do better is understand different perspectives from different areas and be able to have a collective, right? Have a collective of perspectives that informs what I think, rather than I live in Montana or I grew up in Maryland and this is how we do it and this is the way that it's done and it's only done this way, and if someone else does it differently, then they are wrong. Right. That's kind of what fair chase has become, rather than are we being fair to the animal in a way that's respectful of the resource and of the individual animal. Yeah. And so when we talk about that baseline, we really got to understand everybody's baseline is different from the beginning, even if it's an intrinsic baseline. If you eliminate the extrinsic, cultural, shitty, urban baseline that we have to always battle against. Yeah. So it's different. I think so. It's important for you to stand here and say, in my family, in my community, in the woods where I live, this is a thing that is good. Yes. And that is important in and of itself, Yeah. Well, the thing that we are heralding is that the hunting community, for the betterment of all hunting, for the betterment of elk hunting, for the future sustainability of mule deer hunting, hunters need to gather around and just support. I mean, whatever that means to them, support all legal methods of hunting in 2019. I mean, really, that's we've got nothing left to give. I mean, society has trimmed and chopped, and here we are in 2019 in modern times. The North American model of wildlife conservation has been the most successful animal husbandry event of humankind. It's working. Wild places are being saved. There's a lot of bad stuff happening too, but for the sake of that, and I think that's the kind of the thing that I don't think people see or understand, and they wouldn't. But from over here, I'm saying, hey, even if you're not a bear hunter, even if you don't like hound hunters, you might know one you don't like. Well, guess what? This world is bigger than your dislike of that thing. Look at it from the macro perspective. Just like we look at, you kill an individual animal, but your perspective is about the macro population. Well, that's our thing, is that, man, rally around all legal methods of hunting in these days. I mean, and I'm specifically talking about bait and hounds. Yeah. Because effectively, if they get those, then everything is, we've lost hunting. I was thinking about just today. We released this video about my daughter yesterday. Her killing a bear. Oh, that's great. I watched it. And the thing that's, if my daughter and her children and her children's children could in 50 years wake up in Arkansas and look at the mountains that I currently hunt and not be able to go hunt those mountains, I think really that would make them something very different from what I am. Like, it really would. Oh, and I think that's the fear that I have that fear. Yeah. I have a fear. I think it would be, it's kind of, you could compare it to, in a strange sense, you could compare it to if you took wolves and predators off a landscape, what elk turn into, right?
Right. It changes them.
It changes them. They're not elk anymore. You know, you can look at Yellowstone. When they took wolves off of Yellowstone, they became something different, right?
Yeah.
When they reintroduced wolves, the wolves just killed them ad nauseum because the elk didn't anymore know what to do with that predation. Yeah. And I think it's the same thing. We change in the same ways if we eliminate these things. And so I think those cultural things are important. But that's where that's where the conflict and the interesting, like where bear baiting becomes interesting, or where hound hunting becomes interesting, because, and we said this in the last Whiskey and Ethics, like we tend to talk out of both sides of our mouth in a lot of ways. We want to say that we know without a doubt that people that don't hunt have to understand it and they have to accept it, because if they don't, they're going to vote it the hell out. They've done it, or they'll vote in politicians that are going to get rid of it. Yeah. They've done it in New Jersey, done it in California, they've done it in British Columbia. Those are not singular instances that won't be repeated. Yeah. They are the beginning of kind of a cultural fission, or a fissure, I believe. Yeah. Well, so you have those things, like where you need knowledge and acceptance from people that don't do what we do. But at the same time, if you're just going to pander to that lack of knowledge and eliminate and shaving off things that they don't agree with, eventually you'll get to where you explained earlier about, like, you're using plastic calls. That's unfair. Yeah. And so I think that's where these two things bash together. Yeah. Like, we need to stand our ground on certain things, but we also need to understand that there's a non-hunting public that has to get it. Yeah. Somehow. So what the hell do we do with all that?
Man, I think we've just got to keep telling our story, Ben. Yeah. And, when people see that we are just normal humans with families that love our kids, that we're not barbarians, but we're actually good people that pay our taxes and are good citizens and are respectful humans. Like, they are much more endeared to our cause. Now, I think Meter's doing that through what they're doing. I mean, and I'm talking about the show and different things. I mean, I think that's what we're doing through, the videos that we're making, is that we're showing people that we're human. We're endearing them to them, and we're endearing them just to us as humans, because I've yet to meet anybody, and I have a lot of interactions with non-hunting people. We live out in the country, but we're in a very urbanized part of Arkansas, kind of the most affluent part of Arkansas, northwest Arkansas, where Walmart is and all this stuff. And so a lot of people from all over the world. Just this week, my son has been in a betting battle with a boy from overseas that goes to our school. And he asked Bear, my son's name is Bear. Okay. He asked Bear, he said, "Why do y'all hunt?" And Bear said, "Man, we hunt. We eat everything. We're harvesting. We're taking." And he said, "You don't eat the stuff." And Bear said, "I bet you $1 we'll have some type of wild game tonight." And he didn't know. And when he came home, well, we were having bear chili. So he came back to school the next day, won the bet with a boy.
Got $1.
And the boy said, "I bet you $2 you don't have meat again tonight." And Bear said, "I bet you." Anyway, point being, the boy finally realized that, Bear's been talking to him, and he understands that these people really they're eating this stuff. It's healthy. This is a family culture. And I think the kids get. He's a good kid. The other kid, he's one of our family friends. But point being, I think we got to tell our story, Ben. Yeah, or they'll tell it for us. That's what I was. If we don't tell our story, they'll tell it for us. Because I had a conflict. I said it to Renella. I had a conflict when I first started putting my bear hunts up on YouTube. And 5 years ago, I probably wasn't as intentional as I am now. But I had a video that went viral and got massive amounts of hate. Kind of changed my life in some ways, my perspective on people. And I was like, should I put this up? I really wrestled with that a lot. Talked to a lot of people. Should I not put this on YouTube? Yeah. And my conclusion is that, if I don't tell the story, somebody else will. And here's the other thing, is that people need the words. I think what we do in media is we give people the words to say. We craft mind frames and ideology that somebody can go, yeah. I say stuff that I hear, you guys say here at Meat Eater. That have helped me fine-tune my narrative. I also think that humans, the one thing that humans have always been able to do is to discern when someone is authentic.
Yeah.
And if you are a jackwagon, and, you're a jackwagon if you're playing tennis. You're giving tennis a bad name by being a jackwagon. You're also giving hunting a bad name by being a jackwagon. Yeah. I think if we're passionate about something that has so much influence on our life, it ought to make us a better human. Because of hunting, I ought to be a better husband, a better father, a better businessman. I ought to be more honest. I ought to have more integrity. And it's like, I represent something that is bigger than me. And that's what I want people. I want people to, and that's the truth. I think people ought to be able to see a hunter and I think that's the way it used to be.
Well,
I think
for sure it did.
It's like, man, that guy's an honorable man. He's full of restraint. He's disciplined. He's physically disciplined. He's a craftsman in his weapon, with the weapon that he chooses. He's skilled. He knows how to butcher an animal. This is a Renaissance man. It's like hunting used to be something much bigger. And so I say that to say the way to save hunting is to become a better human.
Yeah. Everybody just take a break and rewind and listen to that shit again. That was awesome. And I can't say that you've changed how I think about things, but goddamn, if you're not listening to what Clay just said and thinking harder about how you speak and what you think and what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not willing to tolerate, then you're a fool. Because there are many things that we do online as hunters that just that take away from the words that you just said. That are not the videos that you put up that cause controversy, just by the mere fact that there might be a bear coming into a bait, but there are things out there that just aren't what you just described.
Yeah.
They aren't articulations of the love and respect and the feelings that we have for it. They just aren't.
Yeah.
And we can't let people. We have to let people like you speak, and we have to let people that have their perspectives. There's plenty of houndsmen out there that can come sit right next to you and talk with as much passion about hounds as you can do about bait. There just is.
Yeah.
And those are the people as a hunting community that we need to hear from before we make our decisions about whether we want to personally do something or not, or whether we want to help promote that or not, or help people understand it or not.
Yeah.
So well done on your, you weren't even reading off your notes.
Oh, that wasn't even on the notes, man. I better write that down.
Write that down.
Yeah.
Write that down, Phil.
Write that down.
Write that down, Phil.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there, because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
I think going back to baiting for a quick moment, it has become inside the community and outside the community kind of the front lines of the things that we're arguing about, the things we don't agree on. We can list those out. It seems to always be around predators for lots of reasons. And it seems to be always around ethical issues. Now, when I've said this before in this podcast, I think of fair chase in my own mind now, today. Like, I have to be, in the moment that I decide to kill the animal, it becomes about the animal. Maybe prior to that, it may be that, and this is evolving for me, I would be very honest about this. It may be prior to the killing of the animal, it can be about me a little bit. It can be about adventure. It can be about learning. It can be about being with my family. But at the moment that I draw my bow or shoulder my rifle, I must now start thinking about the animal. But there's more than that. I got to think about the animal even before I've done that to make sure I'm in a situation where I can be ethical in killing. Yeah. So how do you think about that? When do you start thinking about, like, in the hunting sense, in the conceptual hunting sense, when do you start thinking about the animal?
That's a good question. To me, it's I don't see it probably as distinctly segmented like you're saying. I'm not saying I disagree with what you're saying. I see it as more of a total package of just.
Let me clarify what I'm saying.
Yeah, clarify.
I think I'm talking about, like, what I have to do, right? Like, I have choices up until the point, but I have no choice other than to, when I draw my bow, I got to be thinking about, if I send this arrow, is it going to hit its mark? What's the probability that it's going to hit its mark? If I send this bullet, what's the probability it's going to hit its mark? Is it the right animal? Is it the right time? Is it ethical? I have no choice other than to do that at that point. Right. Leading up to that point, there's choices you can make, but when it's time to kill the animal, I have to be thinking about the animal. There's no, I give myself no choice. So when I draw my bow, if it's the biggest buck of my life, but he's standing at 70 yards, I have to tell myself this. I haven't always been this way, but nowadays I tell myself, like, is it right?
Yeah.
Is it true?
Absolutely.
So
I think fair chase and just functional kind of ground roots hunting meet someplace in that I've had bad experiences where I made bad decisions as a young hunter and wish that I hadn't made those decisions. And those instances branded me so strongly that I can't say I'm consciously thinking about fair chase and ethics when I pass on a shot with my traditional bow at a bear at 28 yards. It's like, there's this seamless thing of, it is ethics. That's the reason I've passed, but it's also the bad experiences I've had in the past that branded me. My dad, I always talk about my dad. My dad's 72. Man, he pounded into me before it was cool. He used the term slob hunters a lot, and he talked about guys talking about sling and arrow. Like, there were things that I could not say. Like, we'd go to the bow shop and we'd walk out and he would say, "Don't ever say that you slung an arrow at an animal. Don't ever say that you stuck an animal." Like, cause you walk in there, a guy says, "I stuck one yesterday, couldn't find," I'm talking like when I'm like 8, and so I had this really strong sense of, man, you better take a good shot. And when I was young, the first I ever shot, we didn't recover. And it was almost like, I actually hit the animal right where I was aiming. Said circumstances, we didn't find it. It was, most kids probably would have quit hunting for what I went through trying to recover that animal. And my dad didn't discipline me, but he, in his own way, it's like, it branded me deep. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing. Yeah. Is they don't have that deep respect.
It certainly
I
could
don't
be
know if
that.
that answers your question.
It
Ben.
does. It does. And I think it certainly could be that if you start with that branding, all the other decisions you make are grounded in that idea.
Yeah.
Right. So any decision you make, whether it's to bait a bear or to spot and stalk one or to pass a shot, to take a shot, they're all grounded in that idea of value. Right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so if you start with that idea of value, the rest of the stuff that you do is informed by that, and you generally become a better hunter, right? Because what you're talking about is a hunter. And again, I've seen this, and I'll be flat honest. I've seen it, and I've seen it recently, and I've been a part of it, and I've had to kind of like look around and go, what am I doing? Antelope out west. People fling arrows at antelope.
Right. Shooting long distances.
Shoot long
and stuff,
distances
yeah.
that they wouldn't do other places. Like they're just things we accept as hunters and things I've accepted in the past, and I'm not like charging against anyone here. I'm saying like, this is something I've been a part of and something I've had to, question on my own activities. That to me was like, whoa. What's going on here? Like, why is this happening? Why am I accepting of this? What are we doing here?
There really are different standards for different people. And I think ultimately fair chase is inside of a man, really. I mean, like if we could say that, because, you know your own capabilities, you know what you're stacked up against, you know how well you can shoot, you know your experience. I mean, and a new hunter shouldn't do the same thing as another guy. And that's where we get in trouble, I think, is that there's some guys that legitimately can kill elk or kill antelope at 70 yards with a compound bow.
Yeah.
I mean, there are guys that can do that. There are guys that absolutely should not be doing that. And so that's where the fair chase, if we're just writing out the tenets of fair chase, you just can't. I mean, and it goes back to, even what I was talking about before, is that fair chase really is designed to be an internal position of personal ethics that kind of trust is involved. It's kind of like, I'm going hunting with you. I trust that you have fair chase inside of you. And I mean, it's kind of it's hard to gauge that, but it's
almost at odds with a lot of the ways that we are as humans, right? Because we
want rules.
And we want someone to say like, is that okay? Is not okay? Well, hunting is you're often alone, or you're often with very few people. So there's not this collective like idea. It's all of a sudden you're like, it's you and your own personal choices set against death. Right? Like, it's you and the things that you decide to do in that moment set against the maiming, death, some life-altering situation for that critter, that animal that's standing there. So you're often left with just a personal decision because there's nobody else around. Right? If you're sitting in a tree stand and a deer walks under and he's at 45 yards, he's behind a tree, and all you can see is his guts and his liver and a little bit of his lungs, you're like, I got to take this shot. He's a giant buck. And you shoot him in the guts and you never find him. He gets eaten by coyotes. Like, what was involved there? What was the emotion that you let drive it? Lust. Like, when you're talking about...
I think we've just got to learn from that stuff. Like, people have to be attentive enough. And that's what I was saying about my upbringing. It's like, man, I don't not take bad shots now because I want to be more fair chase. I don't take bad shots now because of the bad experiences that impacted me deeply over the years. So it's like, again, fair chase is inside of a man.
Yeah, you're
like,
in tune. Like some people take those bad shots and slough them off and continue.
Yeah.
Like you're in tune to like this is, and me too. I have like nightmares about bad shots I've taken and dumb shit I've done. And like it this whole conversation becomes just the measure of who you are, how you can adapt. And I think that maybe flips back because I was saying within the grip and grin conversation, like we do things different to try to solve for issues that we have, not with society, but within ourselves, right? People have started doing the solemn grip and grin to solve an issue, right? And I think it's both, like I said earlier, intrinsic and extrinsic. That issue is internal and external. Externally, people don't want to see you smiling and celebrating over something that died. Internally, you really maybe don't want to do that either. Like there's a little bit of both happening at the same time.
I'm kind of into the smile but no direct eye contact with the camera. That's where I'm at right now, Ben.
I like that. But I would say that like with those kind of practices, we're changing them because we're changing.
Yeah.
And the world is changing and all this all this stimuli and all these inputs are changing us as people. They're changing our hunting culture.
Yeah.
And it's hard to recognize that sometimes.
Yeah.
It's hard to recognize who we were and who we are, who we're going to be. And so all these ethical conversations become way more broad.
Yeah.
Baiting becomes way more broad than just baiting because it's not just the idea of putting out an unnatural food source for an animal to come in and eat.
Yeah.
It's more about what you said earlier and more about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know?
Ben, I've got two thoughts.
Please.
And I want to say both of them so that I don't forget.
Yeah.
I have a hard time, my extensive notes here.
Maybe I should start taking. Phil, you think I should start taking notes so I know what I'm saying?
No, I think it's more fun when you don't. When you don't know what you're saying.
I've got two. I've got two thoughts. I want to talk about
Please.
animal death.
Please.
Number one.
Yeah.
And number two, I want to talk about. Spot and stalk hunting, which oftentimes is viewed as the most natural kind of elite way to hunt. So, can you help me remember those, Phil?
Please. Phil do it. Phil do it.
Here's the thing on animal death that I think people don't understand. People see a bear. They see this majestic black bear, and they see a hunter kill that bear, and they think, how could you have killed that bear? Well, the truth is that, do you think that bear is going to live forever? I mean, the cycle, any animal that you see, and I've never heard really anybody say this quite like this, but it's true. That majestic bull elk on the mountain bugling out there right now, he will die. There's my point.
He's a finite life form.
He's going to die, and nature is by essence quite cruel if you talk about human ethics. I mean, like I had a guy the other day. I mean, the architecture of the world we live in involves death that brings back life. I mean, this thing is fueled by death. And so I think part of the anti-hunting sentiment, and even sometimes what we give into a little bit, even as hunters, and that's where I'm careful. I want to be massively and authentically respectful of taking an animal's life. At the same time, I don't want to have a shifting baseline, in that if I hadn't killed that bear, he would have died a very difficult death, much more difficult than a sharp blade between two lungs and him living 8 seconds and just going to sleep after crashing through a thicket. I mean, I'm just being honest. Yeah. Like he would have died from old age, teeth, couldn't chew up acorns, and so died of starvation. He probably died in the den in the winter. I mean, like, you really think about stuff like that, in taking out an animal, it kind of puts it in perspective. And I think that's something that hunters, we don't think about sometimes, is that every animal is going to die. Yeah. And that's not a massively strong point, but that is something that I think
something to remember. And when you talk about that, I was thinking of what's natural death, right? We talk about a natural death, and if you think of how nature is constituted and constructed, death is violent. So a natural death, and many times if you're talking about just the word natural, a natural death is predatory, it's violent.
Nature has
painful.
No problem with violent death.
Nature is death. Nature is pain. Nature is violence.
Yes.
All those things are together in this primordial soup that is the natural world. We have just removed ourselves from the violence and the death and the natural processes in which these things happen. So hunting is in some sense inserting yourself back into this
into something that we've been in since forever.
And we always relied upon being a part of this very violent circle, this very unnatural, this very natural, pain and suffering and all those things that are kind of just intrinsic in the world of nature. That shit gets ripped apart. I was watching a video the other day. That's why nature is metal is a thing. Yeah. Because there's some part of us that needs to remind ourselves that this shit is bad.
Yes.
Nature will rip you apart. Yeah. It doesn't care.
And that's what people don't understand. Ben, I'm reading a book right now called Sapiens.
That's a good book.
Have you read it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The guy, in the first part of it, the guy was talking about how, I almost brought it in today because I thought we might use it as a quote, but he talked about how basically we're hunters that are trapped inside of this civilized society. And there's so much of who we are, even from a biological standpoint, that I mean, there's this conflict in us right now, living in a civilized society, but with this gazillion years of development that we were hunters. I mean, that's kind of it's an interesting thought.
We're different than we used to be, and we'll be different in the future. I mean, this gets super deep, and maybe we should be like taking mushrooms to talk about this. But there is there's an idea that we will be in the future.
More LaCroix.
Yeah, more LaCroix. I'll put a picture up. We got the Meat Eater straight bourbon whiskey here.
It is on the table.
We were able to write pairs with bear bait. I convinced our guys to do that.
Did you not?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
There you go. And we're gonna.
Wow.
So
Thanks,
it does pairs with bear bait, right, Phil?
I haven't tried bear bait, but I'm sure it's something humans.
It's just
can
like
use.
the bear bait's good. Like this is donuts and shit.
Hey, sounds
sometimes.
Great.
But I guess to finish the point of like, we're not what we were, right? We're not. We've
only not been what we were for a very short period of time.
Yeah. We're not what we were, and we won't be what we are in the future, right? We will evolve. And there's often, when I've talked to anti-hunters and animal rights activists, they'll often bring up, and I've thought about this a lot since I've had these conversations, they'll often bring up things like, well, we can't just do it because we've always done it, right? If we always did it because we've always done it, we'd have slaves, and we've had racism, and we've had all these things. And I'd be like, no one can disagree with that point. That point is well made. I get it. But hunting, eating meat, is who we are. Like
right.
You have to separate it from like cultural changes and societal changes that have happened in like blinks of an eye. This is millions of years of evolution. And if you're believing in that story, which I do, that has brought us to this point. Now we were moving away every day. We're moving further away from what we were, but it's a different story to say like we can't have slavery anymore because we know it's bad. Well, we can't have hunting because we know it's bad.
Yeah, it's not even in the same category.
It's not in the same category.
It's not even in the same category.
In the span of time, in the span of who we are, it's just not in the same category. In comparison to hunting, slavery is but a blip on the timeline.
Yeah.
A shitty, terrible, horrible mistake of a blip, but a blip nonetheless.
Yes.
Right? And so our cultural revolution around hunting that started 100 years ago, or less even, is a blip. We had this thing, we changed it, we fucked it up, and then we brought it back.
Yeah.
And that's where we are today. And so I don't know where this all goes back to baiting, but fuck it, man. It's a good conversation.
Okay, listen. I've added another thing to my list.
Oh, yeah,
so I've already
things.
done number 1. Now I've got 2 and now 3. Okay.
Oh, okay. I like it.
Now, just thinking about why in 2019 are we talking about baiting? Why are we talking about bears?
Yeah.
Whatever is happening ecologically in North America has been highly beneficial, specifically to black bears, and that's what I'll say. That'll be my statement. Black bear populations are thriving all across North America.
That's unbelievable.
There is no place where they're like, man, they're really
Wish
they're
we had
really
more black
doing
bears.
bad.
Yeah.
So take that a step further back. The North American model of wildlife conservation, whatever it is and whatever it has done, it's got to be a part of this as well. And so all of a sudden, there is a need on the planet for bear hunters more than ever.
Yeah,
there really is. I mean, like, because if these animals are not managed, if our culture doesn't allot for hunters to be the management tool, then there's going to be other measures to take out bears, because that's the way it works. There's only so much habitat. Bears expand by 10% per year in a normal population, and a lot of populations even more than that. And so, I mean, bears are expanding their range. In Arkansas is an incredible picture of what's happening. There was a reintroduction into Arkansas in the 1950s and 60s of 254 bears, basically into a blank canvas that was once totally inhabited by bears. Today in our region, there's estimates of around 10,000 bears between southern Missouri, Arkansas, southeast Oklahoma, northern Louisiana, and western Mississippi. And it's like these bears from this one place are going into places they hadn't been in 100 years. So it's like whatever's happening, it's good for black bear. We need bear hunters. Takes me into my third point, which is spot and stalk hunting, which, man, it's kind of funny to me that I'm like this spokesman for baiting bears.
Yep.
You know, I told my wife, I was like, I never meant for it to be this way.
I got a lot of that too. I tell my wife all the time, I never really meant to be that.
Yeah.
Like I drank a White Claw and then I thought,
Yeah, well, I love spot and stalk hunting. I truly do. Spot and stalk hunting is the least selective way to hunt bear.
Yep.
Like if for some of these people that are just really wrestling with the ethics of bear hunting, the spot and stalk hunting is by far the least selective way to hunt bear. When I spot and stalk
Very
hunt,
true.
my life is a perfect example of it. I'll sit over a bear bait bin in Arkansas and will pass bears that most people would never pass. I mean, I'll pass incredible animals waiting for really what I'm after. That's my way to limit myself. 3 weeks ago in National Forest in Arkansas, I killed every ounce of an average bear and thought that I had done the greatest feat of any hunter on the planet.
Yeah.
And I was ecstatic. I would have never harvested that bear over bait. And so it's in some ways knocking my spot and stalk hunt, you know?
Yeah.
And so like when I was in Montana this spring, took my mules up to Montana and hunted. I mean, you know, we saw 6 bears. The first one, you know, I missed 2 bears, but you know, I mean, like I wasn't being selective. I was after an adult bear. Yeah. And so that's a really strong point because people.
that's an incredibly strong point. It's It's the point I think that maybe trumps all others here, and I think it's maybe articulated in my mind like this: if I post a picture, I don't, but if someone posts a picture, this happened actually. This happened on First Light's social media recently, where they posted a picture of a guy, a group of a guy, and a pretty small bear.
Yes.
And people wrecked him for it.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
wrecked him for it. Yeah. Now, I'm pretty sure he was spotting and stalking.
Yes.
Just from the photo. I don't know the guy.
It was in Idaho, I think.
Spotting and stalking, right? So people wrecked him for shooting a small bear. Here's what we're talking about. We're willing at one moment to wreck a guy for shooting a small bear. At that same moment, I'm sure there's people in that same crowd that would wreck him for hunting over bait.
Yeah, and being selective.
Now, if we're gonna be against something, we better damn well get our shit together and understand what it is that we're actually talking about. What are we talking about? Are we talking about trophy hunting? Are we talking about, is a big mature adult bear the thing we're after? Well, if that's what we're after, I've seen, we were hunting turkeys in the national forest in Idaho this last year. There was bait sites out there that guys had set up.
Yeah.
I didn't look at those and be like, oh, what are those assholes? I'm like, oh, that's cool that they're out here
The
doing
way I always say it is I say, who's the conservation hero?
Yeah.
I took a little bit of flack for this statement, but who's the conservation hero? The guy that kills and it's kind of in relation to baiting and even what I think you would call trophy hunting maybe, which that's another thing we can talk about. But who's the conservation hero? The guy that non-selectively takes a juvenile or female in whatever type of hunt, or the guy that passes 10 bears and takes an older age class male. You know, the one thing that we do preach a lot is that older age class males, most of the time in most management situations, are the best animals. They're a target animal. Yeah. They've contributed to the gene pool. They're a target animal. And so, you know, like who's the conservation hero? The spot and stalk guy, me, Clay Newcomb, that went to Montana and killed an average bear, or the Clay Newcomb that last year hunted in Oklahoma and killed a 550-pound bear over bait. I would not have shot anything less than that bear. I mean, a lot of people would look at that and say, you are a trophy hunting sucker. And I'd say, well, who's the conservation hero?
Yeah.
Me taking out that old bear who's contributed to the gene pool, lived a happy, full life in a wild place in southeast Oklahoma, or the guy that, you know, shot the first one that he saw.
Yeah, well, and that just goes back to like what we were talking about before about the pursuit and your personal feelings, your personal ethics, and the situational ethics, and when's it about the animal, when's it about. I would say, and we'll start this by saying, we're going to eliminate all the assholes from the conversation and say like we're thinking of this conversation like a responsible practitioner of a hunting style that values the animal they're hunting. Just start with that. Okay. We'll start with that because if somebody's an asshole, they can do either one of these two things.
They give tennis a bad name if they played tennis.
Yeah. So if somebody's an asshole, they could spot and stalk like one, and they could bait like one. But if you're a value hunter, I would say that, and I've been around Montana just for one bear season, and I would say that within the community here, there's less there really is truly less of an idea of being selective around spot and stalk. You're looking for a nice mature bear, but it's not like you're and you want it to be a boar. You don't want it to be a sow with cubs, but there isn't the same structure around that as when you're sitting over bait and you're looking at animals as you did in Oklahoma. There just isn't the same structure. It's a different structure. It's also just a different type of pursuit altogether. You're still looking for a big mature boar, but I have bear hunted and I've made mistakes myself around bears, spotting and stalking, thinking, well, that's a nice boar, and then he happened to be standing by a weird looking thing of brush. And I guarantee there's plenty of hunters that have pulled the trigger on a spot and stalk hunt with a rifle and walked over and been very disappointed as to what they found.
That argument or that statement is really just made to this idea, which I think is pretty alive, in that spot and stalk hunting is kind of the elite, like the right way to hunt.
Yeah.
I feel, and I may have a kind of a persecution mentality, and I'm okay with that. But
let me help you with that. I have done baited hunting. I've done spot and stalk hunting. I've done all that stuff as you have. There was a point in time where I thought, I'm not going to hunt over bait anymore. Personally, it just doesn't give me the value. And then I started to think of, well, okay, why am I saying that? What am I saying that for? And then I was like, well, you know what? Maybe it's because when I travel, like a lot of times when I'm bear hunting before I moved to Montana, I would have to travel to hunt, right? So when I travel to hunt, I want to see country. I want to see animals. I want to be out in it. I don't want to be sitting in a box blind looking at a barrel, right? And so I started thinking, well, it's not baiting that I'm not into.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, it's the situation I was in.
Yeah, it's the totality of the hunt.
Yeah, and so what baiting doesn't provide the things I'm looking for.
And that's where me talking about I kind of live in two different worlds.
Yeah.
Two totally different mind frames. When we're baiting bears and stuff, it's with the kids, and it's like, I don't know, it's a totally different animal than when I go on a spot and stalk hunt in Montana or in Arkansas. And that's okay for me.
Yeah.
I can be that complex.
That's to me is like when I moved to Montana, now I'm like, wait, I can go out my back door and hunt bears. I can do it right now. I got a bear tag in my pocket. I could walk out there and go try to find a bear that's getting ready for hibernation and whack him.
Yeah.
As long as he was black. I could do that. So that changes my whole view of bear hunting. Now bear hunting is a local phenomenon for me. When I was living in Texas, I couldn't go hunt a black bear. And so it just changed. That in and of itself changes the way that I see all these things. Right?
Yeah.
And so the fact that it's legal for you to bait bears on private property where you live, you can go and do that. It changes the way you see other bear hunting, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I think I had to just realize that I wasn't so against baiting. It wasn't like sitting by a bait was the worst thing in the world. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
I hunted bait with some guys up in Alberta where we would be sitting there with a bow in my hand, and there are 14 black bears within 50 yards of me.
Let me ask you this. What other hunting experience would be anything remotely like
Dude, it was otherworldly. I was sitting there with Cam Haynes. I'm sitting there with Cam Haynes. He's an insane person. He had already killed his bear. He was there with a knife, and he was just like, bears are walking 5 yards from us, and he's sitting there with a knife. I'm like, this guy's he's insane. I love him. But it's like, that for me was a great experience, and every night we went out and sat in Alberta, there were a bunch of bears, and we got to watch them, got to see how they acted, got to learn about them. So look, there's a ton of value in that, and I traveled to go and do that, so there was a ton of value in that.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, as people are thinking about this, think about kind of what you're really after, and whether baiting is just kind of like shifting the hunting narrative for you on a particular hunt.
And the thing is people, not everybody has to hunt bear over bait.
Yeah.
And I think there's the complex human gymnastics that people have to do, which is a joke.
Yeah.
But to think that you could support something that you may never do for the sake of something much bigger. And that's what we're saying is that, this is way bigger than just, I don't want to hunt bear over bait, or I do. We need, and that's the unification point that we talked about earlier, is that, everybody needs to gather around all forms of legal hunting. I mean, I really believe that. you can still. Well, I won't go into that. There's very few like archaic like hunting laws or regulations. None. I have none personally that I just look at and go like, man, they shouldn't be doing that.
Yep.
I mean, maybe 100 years ago, yeah. I mean, market hunting or whatever.
Yeah.
Just man, that's the statement, and don't give in to the propaganda, the emotional propaganda that a bear is any different than a deer. He is not. He does not have the ability to reason. He does not have the ability to have his feelings hurt because he thinks that someone's baiting him in to kill him. I read a book called Evidence-Based Horsemanship. It actually helped me in my hunting. This whole thing of inside of training horses and mules and different things. People are massively they assign human characteristics to animals big time inside of training. Like that horse likes me, that horse doesn't like me, that horse doesn't like it when I do this, that horse thinks this, da da da. And like humans have this developed frontal lobe. Animals don't have a place in their mind to have their feelings hurt. That may seem disconnected from what we're talking about, but I think from when you start talking about baiting bears, when you start talking about charismatic megafauna, when you start talking about an animal that has been so, what's the word I'm looking for? Anthropomorphized, that you start thinking that this animal is different than other things.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he's not.
And that's why the word
not.
That's why the word charismatic is more important there. Like animals, a lot of animals exhibit different forms of sentience, different forms of charisma, right? Different forms. A lot of them treat their young differently. A lot of them treat their mates differently. I mean, there's a lot of examples of what we would discern as emotion in the animal world, but as you said, like
it's not.
But even if there was, even if we could just say, "Whoa, there definitely is," then the natural world doesn't give a fuck about it. It doesn't care. It just doesn't care. I mean, if that grizzly bear really loves its two cubs, that's not going to stop the natural world from ripping them apart if it has to. Right? It's not going to stop some other predator or some male grizzly bear from ripping those cubs apart to bring that sow back into heat so he can get what he wants.
Yeah.
And so even if, I think you're right. I think animals don't have the emotions. They do display characteristics of emotion, but I don't think they have the capability for the depth of emotion that we assign to them.
Right.
And so here we are left with this, even if what I just said was flat wrong, and there's dolphins and other critters that have more sentience than others, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Killer whale doesn't care if that dolphin likes you or hates you, or it doesn't matter. And so we have the capacity to reason all these things and understand them, but our capacity to reason doesn't, like you just said, change what's happening outside with these in the natural world. It just doesn't. In wild places, our reasoning doesn't change anything.
And inside of hunting, I mean, the baseline human architecture that has scripted the last thousands and thousands of years is that human life is different than animal life. Mm-hmm. I mean, like as hunters, we've got to say that. Every predator makes a decision that his life is actually more valuable than the life of the animal that he's taken.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because I think about this often. Maybe end with this. This would be a good one to end with. It's a chicken or the egg situation. Do we think this way because we're hunters, or are we hunters because we think this way? Because very much of what I try to avoid in my life is having this set of ideologies and reasonings that are built by what I want the world to be. Mm-hmm. I love hunting. Do I think about animals this way because I love hunting, or at the same time, do I hunt because I think about animals this way? And I think that's when you talk to animal rights folks, you start to have to answer that question for yourself. I think lots of animal rights folks don't look at that question. Do I love animals or do I not hunt because I love animals, or do I love animals because I don't kill them? And I think for most of my interaction with animal rights folks and anti-hunters that have been very genuine, I find that they are applying their worldview to what they see rather than building their worldview off of what is real. And so we must ask ourselves the same thing. So
Well, I think you said it well. So
I mean, do you think, like, and that it's just a good way to kind of self-actualize a little bit and be like,
Yeah.
am I saying all this because I like to bait bears? Am I just trying to reason my way into some shit I like?
Yeah.
Or is it really what I say it is?
You know, I don't know that I have a really good rebuttal to that other than that.
And I'm not charging you with that. I'm just
Well,
saying,
no. I said this the other day as I listened to your podcast with the other guy, Barry
Gay Gilbert, yeah.
You know, some of the things he said, I think he had a point. And all I know is that the way that we view hunting and the way that we navigate, it is so legitimate that there's no way that it's wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's the only way. Like when I listened to Barry, like I had this thought, like, well, I mean, maybe there's a space for some, and I'm not legitimizing a lot of the stuff he said. A few things he said, I was like, well, that's his thought. I guess he has the right to think that.
Good for you.
But our way of doing things is legitimate. It makes sense. It's rational. It's congruent with our humanity. It's working. It's sustainable. It's yeah. So I mean, I think it makes sense. Does everybody need to bait bears? No. Does everybody need to hunt like me and you hunt? No, probably not. They won't. But I don't think we're building a narrative to just fit our lives.
Yeah.
I think it's too congruent with what's happened for the last 15,000 years.
And I realize these things in my own life because I'm able to articulate them to other people and make them understand them. And like I have family members that don't hunt. If they come and ask me questions, I can articulate what I'm talking about, and they understand it almost immediately and get what I get. And so that's my proof. My proof is that I can explain this, and other people that don't hold my same value systems can be like, I get what you're saying. Yeah. And so as long as I'm able to do that, the question I just posed is like an unanswerable question. You're not really sure, like, why you're doing what you're doing a lot of times. Like you said, like we're always not. We end up really connecting to something and then not understanding how far we carry it, and how much we carry it within ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that may be a little too deep for a morning podcast, but I think it's worth asking because I've found it to be the biggest criticism and why I think the animal rights thing will just eventually shrivel up and die. Is just because it's not and I just don't think our entire society will devolve into people that are applying what we think to the world rather than the opposite.
Yeah.
I just don't.
That's why our voice has to just get so much stronger. It really does, because in a world of chaos and craziness and incongruency with the architecture of this planet, like our voice has to become strong.
Yeah.
I mean, and because it just the most simple principle is that, man, we've been hunting for a long time. We've got to gather meat for our families. It's ancient and honorable. It's sustainable. If there were no black bears, I would have no right to stand in here and say, let's bait them and kill them.
Yep.
None. But black bears just happen to be thriving right now, not in spite of hunting, but because of hunting.
Yep. And baiting is a part of that.
Baiting is a massive part of it.
Beautiful. Well said. Thank you, Clay. That was awesome.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
That's it. That's all. Another episode of the Hunting Collective is in the books. Thanks to Sam Soholt. Stamp it forward. Go to Sam's Instagram at Sam Soholt, Venmo at Sam Soholt, and participate and stamp it forward. It's $25. That's what it costs you, and it goes to a bigger cause than you probably realize. So go and do that right now. Also, thanks to Clay Newcomb. Go check out his YouTube page. Go check out Bear Hunting Magazine. Think about the concepts that we talked about on baiting. It's very important. Phil, that kind of went off of baiting for much of the conversation, did it not?
A little bit, but I think to the benefit of the conversation.
To the benefit of the conversation. So it's a great podcast. I'm not going to end with any other pleas to you. Only thing that I want to say is shoot me an email, thc@themeteor.com. Shoot me a message. Whenever you send something to Sam, I just want to hear about it. I want to know that you did it, and it's important to me that you do. So if you ever did anything I ever asked of you, do this one thing. All right, we'll see you next time on the Hunting Collective. Bye.
Stay here too long, 'cause I can't go a week without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking in heaven. Sitting as the boss food starts to grow roots. I'm feeling like an old worn-out pair of shoes. Oh, tell me what is it that I should do?
You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins. Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like them. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.